The fairest of them all begins our journey of historical discourse, and I fear she starts at a modern disadvantage. Snow White doesn't really rank on our list of favorite princesses, especially in the wake of third wave feminism, which leaves this girl out in the cold. But I have a special fondness for Snow White, and upon reviewing the facts, I think that she has the potential to change the face of German history. Where's this chick from? Snow White is a Bavarian fairy tale, so we can assume that Snow White's stepmother is the Queen of Bavaria, or more accurately, the Duchess of Bavaria. However, unless there's some funky line of succession going on, Snow White's prince isn't a Bavarian prince. He's from a neighboring kingdom, which I place in Württemberg to the west. When Snow White and Florian get on that beautiful white stallion and ride to the kingdom in the clouds, it is my guess that he takes her to 16th century Württemberg for their happily ever after. Historical context. Germany is not Germany as we know it in the 16th century. It's more a loosely unified collection of states that are all under the thumb of the Holy Roman Empire. Each state is ruled by either a duke, a prince, or in some cases the clergy, but all of the rulers have to balance passing legislation that works for their state and legislation that works for the Holy Roman Empire. The result is serfdom is basically legal. Combine that with high taxes and some religious reform in the east, and you've got an unruly peasant class. Snow White's kingdom. In 16th century Württemberg, Duke Ulrich runs the show. He successfully expanded the borders of Württemberg, but conquest always costs money. So Ulrich's run himself into a nasty little spot of debt. He tries to correct this debt by taxing the rich, but spoiler alert, the rich do not like being taxed. So instead he places a high tax on food. What Ulrich fails to understand is that the peasants can't afford food now, especially after a series of crop failures, and he continues to upset them by passing legislation that helps the Holy Roman Empire and basically furthers his own interests. His poorest subjects fight back in what's known as the Poor Conrad's Revolt of 1514. Public opinion of the Duke is so low that it doesn't really change after he repeals the taxes. He goes back to the aristocrats and they agree to pay off his debt as long as he gives them a say in when he wages war next. Spoiler alert, he doesn't give them a say. The Duke's reputation is further ruined when he casually murders one of his good friends because he's jealous of his friend's wife. Who among us can say we haven't casually murdered a friend over love? The Duke's wife runs away because he is clearly a violent jerk, and his wife's family comes in and basically attacks him and says, "You're not fit to rule because you are an awful person." To which the Duke replies, "You can't make me do anything. I have aristocrat friends." To which the aristocrats reply, let's see, violent awful person or foreign people that we can't influence to make things happen our way. So the aristocrats back him up. Reluctantly. However, their support doesn't even matter in the end because he decides to go and conquer an imperial free city without asking them first, and so he's forced to flee. This is where I'm inserting Snow White. Snow White is Duchess. Snow White can't exactly be princess because Württemberg doesn't have princes and princesses, but she can be a duchess. And here's how her duchy is going. Württemberg is currently a huge mess. The crops aren't plentiful. The peasants are revolting, the aristocrats feel used for their money and manipulated, and in 10 years the German Peasants' War is going to begin. Meanwhile, Martin Luther and Thomas Munster are stirring up religious reform in the northeast. Württemberg is also one of the most populous areas in the Holy Roman Empire, coming in at 400,000 citizens. So how does Snow White change the picture? Let's assume that after the Duke's exile, the duchy turns to Florian to rule in his place, along with his beautiful young corpse bride from Bavaria. There does not seem to be a lot to recommend this young couple, considering that Snow White's virtues basically include a worrying amount of trust in strangers and fastidious hygiene.
No. Look hard.
Let's give Snow White a more sympathetic view, okay? Snow White is a total sweetheart. She's optimistic and tender and bears her stepmother's cruelty and her demotion to a scullery maid with total grace. Innocent woodland animals are immediately drawn to her like unicorns are drawn to a virgin. Balancing her goodness with her erstwhile stupidity, let's run Snow White the Rachel rating scale. Diplomacy. Snow White brings a pretty important alliance to her marriage and to Württemberg right off the bat. She has cultivated the perfect loyalty of a faction of dwarves in the Black Forest. This opens up a whole new world. This opens up a whole new world of magical politics. Who are the dwarves' allies in the Black Forest? Are there any other mythical creatures to whom they could introduce her? Could her friendship with the dwarfs somehow be parlayed into an extended friendship with fairies or good witches or centaurs? Even if the dwarves are the only magical creatures in the Black Forest, Snow White still has a lot going for her. Her complete lack of guile and her absolute delight at meeting new people is likely to come through with her conventions with the aristocrats, meetings with poor subjects, and negotiations with foreign kingdoms. But there is a downside here. Snow White has proven to have a really poor track record with trust. From falling in love with a prince to whom she has never spoken, to living with 7 dwarfs, to allowing an old crone into her home, Snow White trusts everyone she meets. This could easily go south if she ever decides to place her trust in a greedier or untrustworthy faction who takes advantage of her goodness. I give her 10 out of 20. Optics. In the film, we have evidence that Snow White is both Christian and mindful of her virtue. We see her praying before bed, and we see her run away from an unchaperoned interaction with a handsome young man, despite the passion in her young heart. Snow White definitely waited for marriage, if you get my meaning. No one is about to call the new Duchess a hussy, and no, I do not want to hear jokes about her living with 7 men. Since the only person who knew she lived with dwarves is dead, Snow White's situation is secret as long as she doesn't tell her handsome swain. She's beautiful, pious, and virtuous. A complete 10 out of 10. Economics. As I explained, Snow White's duchy is in massive debt after Ulrich's series of screw-ups. 1 million golden to be exact. The peasants and the aristocrats don't want to be taxed, but someone's got to pay off the debt or the duchy will be in ruins. Guess who became bosom friends with a faction of dwarves who own a freaking diamond mine? The 7 dwarves work daily in a mine rife with valuable jewels. They sing about having at least 1 million diamonds and 1,000 rubies. And here's the kicker. They don't even need the jewels! I'm certain that somehow their attachment to Snow White could persuade them to form some sort of trade deal with the young Duchess. And that's barring the possibility that the dwarves won't just give them to her, considering they don't even use them. Snow White could take Württemberg out of the red and into the black if she flexes her connection with the dwarves. With extra diamonds and some careful monitoring, Snow White and Florian can get Württemberg back on the path to prosperity. She gets 20 out of 20. Influence. This is where Snow loses big. She's a product of her time. Not just 16th century, but 1937, when the film was released. Snow White is the perfect royal housewife. She doesn't exactly pop up as a first choice for Disney's most outspoken princess. Plenty of women in her time and earlier were able to make themselves known as strong monarchs in their own right, but they had to push a lot of buttons to do it. And Snow White doesn't strike me as the type to rock the boat. Which means even though she does bring in an important ally and a lot of money to her marriage and to her duchy, she doesn't have the necessary push to get Florian to use everything she offers in an innovative way. She gets 0 out of 10. Conflict management. Snow White's diamond mine does immediately cover the massive debt. This is going to create relief across the board in the social classes. The peasants physically can't pay the taxes that Ulrich instated, and the aristocrats don't want to. This is especially helpful considering that in 10 years' time the German Peasants' War was going to strike up in Württemberg. The peasants who started the war listed their grievances as high taxation, restriction from the lands in the forest, and exclusion from hunting and fishing rights. With Snow White's diamondy clean slate, the peasants won't be taxed so highly. Furthermore, the film depicts Snow White as a woman who is deeply connected to nature. Wildflowers and woodland creatures flock to her. I imagine a woman with so deep a love of her country's land wouldn't restrict her subjects' access to it. However, class struggles have a way of happening whether you want them to or not. If Snow White doesn't carefully monitor the influx of diamonds into her duchy's economy, she could inadvertently cause inflation, and then Württemberg is right back where it started. Even if this alternate Disney course of history does keep the German Peasants' War from starting in Württemberg, that doesn't mean it's not going to start somewhere else. Religious reformer Thomas Munster in the Northeast is writing some seriously radical support of peasant rights, and he travels down to the Southwest to talk to the peasant leaders there and give them advice about how to organize their cause. If his ideas catch fire in neighboring kingdoms, the war still happens and it might come to Württemberg anyway. Bottom line is, Snow White has the potential to rectify all the problems in her own duchy. But all the diamonds in the world can't stop the spread of ideas. For this, she gets 30 out of 40. Bringing Snow White to a grand total of 70 out of 100. Honestly, this early into the series, I actually don't know if that's a good score. Good for you. Good for you, Snow. Claps for Snow. What do you guys think? Do you think the dwarves actually aren't that nice and they wouldn't just freely give up the diamonds? Do you think that Snow White's too stupid to keep an eye on how many diamonds are circulating in her duchy and that inflation's inevitably going to happen? Do you know more about the Protestant Reformation than I do? I'd love to hear what you think. See you next time.